Today in the Chairman's Corner, a look at crime and safety in Fulton County and the cities within. What are the concerns of residents, businesses, and law enforcement? We'll take a look, plus we'll hear from a few of the stakeholders committed to making our communities safer. The Chairman's Corner begins right now. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. So our focus today is about what many of you have expressed as a major concern in our communities, crime and safety. For months, I've engaged residents along with members of the law enforcement and judicial communities in a series of meetings on this very topic. Take a look.
It affects every single one of us.
Residents had the floor, and elected officials and law enforcement were all ears.
Email all your neighbors that come, because this is a great opportunity to work with the City Hall and Fulton County.
Residents thanked those on the panel for giving them the opportunity to ask questions and figure out what they can do to help make streets safer. The Superior Court Chief Judge Tucson says citizens can help by being court watchers.
They can report the crimes. They can stick with the case through the whole process. They can come to court and speak on behalf of the victims, or if they are the victims, speak about what they've experienced so that we can fashion the appropriate result.
During these meetings, residents have said public safety issues are in many neighborhoods and not just confined to one area. They're also concerned that the age of suspects seem to be getting younger.
I think the larger concern that I'm hearing is the number of youth that are going into criminal activity, and how can we as a community embrace our young people.
One major push that will come out of these meetings is more mentoring programs to help the future generation. Some of the same issues brought up at this session were also brought up at the first Crime and Safety Summit. Now this is a work in progress, so the conversation on public safety issues in neighborhoods will continue. Reporting for FGTV, I'm Priscilla Ortega.
Thank you, Priscilla. When we come back, we hear from some of the key stakeholders dealing with crime and safety in our communities. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our topic today, crime and safety in our community. Our first guest to talk about this is Kit Cummings with the Power of Peace Project. Welcome to the show, Kit.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I got a few questions to ask you. I'm just burning to learn more about what you're doing as well as providing information to our community. So what is the Power of Peace Project?
Power of Peace Project is a program that was an idea that turned into an experiment, which became a program and a 501c3, and now it's become a movement that has taken me literally to, it started in a prison, and it was Georgia's at the time in 2011. There was a prison up in North Georgia that was very violent, and it was the highest number of gang members that were active in a Georgia prison. And it was a level 5 that was on the verge of a level 6. And I had begun to volunteer there in a faith-based program. And when I went in, I found something that I did not expect, because everybody has a perception of what prison is and who the convicts are. And they taught me that they respect the word convicts. I want to use that respectfully. And when I began to make friends with the men, I saw brothers and fathers and uncles and sons and grandsons. And there was a connection there that all I can explain was it was the perfect place at the perfect time. And I found this calling, which became a passion, and tried an experiment in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King on his birthday, and challenged 12 men, black, white, and Hispanic, to engage in a 40-day peace project. And magic happened, and now it got me all over the world.
So you mentioned it's a movement. So it started where specifically, and where has it grown to over the past, X number of years?
It started in Georgia.
Okay.
And the unintended consequence, I just followed it as it began to emerge, and doors began to open, and invitations were given, and for some reason, they started treating me as an expert, and I would show up. And to tell you the truth, I was trying to keep up with it. And Dr. King still commands ultimate respect.
Right,
and these men responded, and I challenged them to 7 principles. They were nonviolent principles. Gandhi, King, and Mandela were the foundation. And for 40 days, they began to journal. We met together once a week, and they started sitting down with their rivals. And these are gang rivals, you know, white and black, Muslim, Christian, you know, the gangs that are the ones that are running the prison. And they became human to one another, and they began to find commonality. But what they need, and what I learned from them, is they lack purpose, and they just learn to get by and learn the convict code and how to survive in there. And when challenged with a divine purpose, which is be a father on the inside, be a role model, because they're watching. I found these kids are watching Grand Theft Auto, listening to rap, watching Gangland on TV, and they're practicing. And we have a pipeline that's developed from the schools to the prisons. Well, these men, they stood up to the challenge because they do want to be called to do something great. But then I started being invited into the schools, and I believe that's why I'm here today.
Right. In fact, that's my passion in terms of working with kids within the school setting. So what specifically are you doing or can be doing within the school system, but particularly with at-risk youth?
Right. Well, the hook became, this is a guy that works with the toughest prisons, and not just in the prisons, but with the guys that are leaders in the prison, because the program was designed to engage leaders. And bullying is a spirit, okay? It's not just in our schools. I mean, bullying happens in homes and in corporate America and with pastors and with, it's just, it's a spirit, it's a domination, you know, kind of spirit. And obviously it's very exaggerated and intense in prisons. Well, we started going into schools, and this is a young generation that's not listening much to judges and preachers and teachers and officers and parents. They're listening to the media and the video games and the music. When I began to tell the story of what was going on in prisons, you could hear a pin drop. They wanted to know. And I began to challenge them to find role models and mentors and to begin to follow the example of what was going on in the prison. Then I'd go back in the prison and tell them about what the kids were doing, which fueled that movement. Then I would go back to the schools and tell them what was happening in the prisons, and the two began to inspire one another, and we developed a program in the schools called Inspired Straight, as opposed to Scared Straight, which is tough.
Right. You know, it's interesting you mentioned Scared Straight. So back in the 70s, I believe, maybe 80s,
Yeah,
that was the model that was used to kind of shock young people. So you think this model is a lot more effective in terms of as a deterrent, I guess?
Yes, sir. And we started taking some youth, at-risk youth, up to this particular prison. Peace came to that prison for a time, and this prison won Institution of the Year that year in 2011. And, you know, a lot of it was attributed to the Power of Peace Project, the 40 Days of Peace. And so the kids began to be inspired. I believe that scared works for a minute. You can scare somebody, and you can change their behavior for a minute, but I don't believe fear motivates. Love motivates. And inspiration can last a lifetime. And so we began to talk to these kids in a language they understood. And that doesn't mean slang. And I meant just the way we see it is, I see you, I feel you, I got you. That's how they talk to one another. So we began to see them and listen to them and get involved in the conversation and inspire them to stay in school and to get off or stay off of drugs. We started talking about teenage pregnancy, bullying, cyberbullying. I mean, these are huge issues. And what got our attention, and I think what's gotten Fulton County, especially up north Fulton, is suicide. There's killing in the streets of the inner city. There's suicide and overdose in the suburbs, and we're losing our children.
So you mentioned love, and usually when you think of love, you think of the role of the church or a place of worship, whether it's a synagogue or a mosque. What role can places of worship play in terms of this whole peace movement? I'm
so glad you asked that question, because as this thing began to emerge and evolve, I've been a student of Dr. King's work. And of course that brought me to Gandhi and the other iconic champions of peace around the world. But one of the early things that Dr. King did is he engaged pastors and churches to get involved in this nonviolent struggle, in this movement, and to use their voice. And so we began to put together this idea that in every community, you've got jails, you've got prisons, you've got schools. The prisons are filling up, and we're building more prisons than we are schools. The schools are losing students at an epidemic rate as they're dropping out. And the churches are doing their best, but a lot of it is preaching to the converted. And back in the days that I grew up in the 60s as a kid, but then I started studying it 25 years ago, the church was the rallying point. It was where the community came together, to try to heal that community. And so we've tried to transform those 3 points, prison, schools, and churches, and heal wounded communities and try to get those kids to stay in school, to get the churches to get involved in this crime and safety and youth, problem. And then help the guys on the inside to get out and stay out. And that's what, the governor all the way down to, the teachers and wardens are trying to do is attack this recidivism rate.
So your passion is very evident from this conversation we're having.
Can't stop.
So what's your vision? So there's movement and there's expansion, there's evolution. So what's your long-term vision in terms of truly having not just a regional, statewide, national, but maybe an international impact?
Yes, sir. Well, the interesting thing is Georgia was where it started. But then there were 2 other key places in the country that became aware and invited me in, and that was Muskegon, Michigan, where you've got 3 prisons right in very close proximity, and you've got medium, maximum, and minimum. And so guys getting ready to go home, guys doing long terms. And then you've got schools in that area that are very interested because they're experiencing the same thing we are as in Fulton County, a young generation that's, lining up to get into Fulton County jails and go into big boy prison. And so they allowed us to try this experiment. And I'll be going back to, and the other one was Kansas, Ellsworth, Kansas. And those are 2 very interesting things that showed that this program worked. And I'll be going back to Kansas this month and Muskegon next month and doing prison tour, school tour, and local church rallies and bringing the community together. It's become such a movement in those places. The last time I was in Michigan, which was a few weeks ago, the warden opened it up to any inmate that wanted to be involved, and over 500 men signed up for the Peace Pledge and began to use these 40-day
This
platforms.
is great. You got some great. So are you a committee of one, or do you have a team that works with you?
Yes and yes. I'm out there on the front lines as the voice and the face of this, and then I have wonderful people like Kate, who you're going to hear from today, and others that are starting to surround me because it takes a team. 2 are better than one, but I'll tell you, it's I better have a lot of energy because it's been me for a while here.
Well, one thing is evident: not only are you passionate, but you're also committed, and obviously generating some positive results. So we need to duplicate you times 100 and thousands, because you're really taking on a noble charge here.
I didn't answer your question fully. I know we're running. You said, what is your vision? This is a peace movement for a young generation that has never had one. And our vision is for this to sweep across the country and then go to I have taken this to South Africa and Ukraine and Honduras and Mexican prisons. And these universal principles work wherever they're practiced. And so we want it to spread to schools all over the country.
Well, you got so much information, so much passion. We're going to have to bring you back.
I go where I'm invited.
Well, Kit, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kit. When we come back, we are hear from another key player in the fight to keep our communities safe. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking today about crime and safety in our communities. I'd like to now welcome Kate Boccia from HOPE, a parents initiative. Welcome to the show, Kate. We've known each other for several months now, so happy to be with you today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So you've been doing great work in our community, especially in North Fulton, and working with kids, working with this issue of drugs. Talk to us as parents. What do you recommend that we as parents do in terms of working, dealing with our children who are dealing with opiates?
Well, my first recommendation with all my parents are to listen to their gut. I think when I look back over the past several years back when my son started down that road, I didn't listen to my gut, although it was screaming very loudly. And I think every mother that's out there would understand exactly what I mean. So if they would listen to what they think is going on, and then acknowledge it and get the help they need. What I've learned, and I've just learned this recently, and I wish I had known this several years ago, I wouldn't be on this show right now, is that I'm not an expert. I'm just a mom. And if my doctor gave my son a cancer diagnosis, I would have gone to the experts. When my son was given the addiction diagnosis, I chose to try to fix him myself. That doesn't work. So I think that's probably my biggest message to parents. You're not the expert in addiction. You're just the expert at being a mom.
Well, you actually have a great story. So let's kind of back up a little bit. Just share a little bit with the listening audience about what happened. Maybe even talk about opiates, which is a big word for some folks. So just tell us a little bit about what happened, your background, and this issue of opiates as it plagues our young people.
Okay, well, I've been in Fulton County for 21 years now and brought my family here to, raise them in a really wonderful cul-de-sac lifestyle. And room mom, soccer mom, team mom, stay-at-home mom. Very fortunate to have a lot of opportunities in my life. Then my son started struggling through the late middle school, probably early high school years. The smoke the pot, the drink the beer that we all kind of say, oh, I guess that's okay, Moving forward, we battled with him. We battled with each other as a family. He was very disrespectful, and ultimately we enabled our son unknowingly. Certainly, we would never have done that had we understood what we were doing. Moving forward, he getting worse and worse into the addiction. And so now I'm caught up in an arena that I'm completely unfamiliar with and frightened, and reaching out to my community and asking for help and not finding the help I needed. So the type of person I am is I require people to give me as much as I'm going to give them. And I was willing to give my community everything, all the support they needed in order to help my son. And I was not receiving that support anywhere. So I started on my own just by writing to people like you, emails and letters and emails and talking and saying the dreaded word heroin in my community. And that was, how it began, just a fight for my family.
So you're a parent, I'm a parent. So what would you say to me and others who say, not my child?
Oh, I love that question, because here's what I say, and I say it makes sense when I say it this way. When your child's born and you leave the hospital, you don't say to yourself, we might get in a car accident on the way home, so I better buckle them up. You just assume that I'm going to buckle them up in case. You do this preventive measure right away. From the second your child's born, you try to prevent them from getting in car accidents, you try to prevent them from diseases, you give them exercise, the right foods, all the things necessary. What I say to parents is not that I woke up one morning and said, I think I'll have my son be a heroin addict today and be in prison. I think that sounds like a plan. I've never said that in my life, and there's not a mother out there that has ever said that. So what I should have assumed is that the possibility existed, that my son could become an addict, and how do I protect him from that? How do I protect my family from that? That's by education, awareness, conversations, and by my community all standing together and saying we won't allow that to happen. It's unacceptable. And so to parents that are in the denial mode, not my child, is your child going to get in a car accident today? You don't know that. And addiction is just that. It's a car accident.
So you, like Kit, committee of one, out there shaking the branches and raising the awareness. What would you say to folks like me who are politicians or elected officials and other leaders? What would you do to educate us in terms of this issue of overdosing, usage of drugs, and even suicide? What would you say and what would you do?
I would say that all of you have to take ownership of these issues. vocally, public service announcements, allowing families with children in trouble to say, we hear you, we see you, just like Kit does with the children. We know you're there, we feel you, and we understand what you're going through, and we're here to help you. Because I talk about suicide, addiction, incarceration, overdosing, and now we're talking about murder, because we had 2 boys murdered in Roswell. So this drug is so powerful that if our elected leaders and elected officials and our community leaders don't acknowledge it, it's not going to stop. The fallout of a drug as powerful and dangerous as heroin is far-reaching, and we cannot, if our community leaders aren't willing to say the heroin word, then more kids will die. And I'll tell you right now, I've said this since 2011 when I talked to Mayor Belle. I said more kids will die. Last October I said it, more kids will die. I said it in November, more kids will die. And you know what? We had more kids die this week. So.
Well, you know, the other thing as you were talking, I was, again, going back to the interview with Kit, he mentioned about killings. That gets attention, they're bad. But there's sort of this silent killing or that's occurring or dying in terms of the drug usage. Again, just restate, what can we do to raise their awareness or get a sense of urgency and action?
The urgency is now. It is here today, this minute, all over our country. What we can do is we are working feverishly on resources, and we all have resources. There are programs all out there, but we don't know how to get to them. So connecting the dots, that's kind of my role. How to put into our communities that Fulton County could have available in my community, I have these resources, whether I need help, whether I want my kids to be a Boy Scout or Girl Scout, whether we want to join hiking, biking, swimming clubs, what are the churches, a resource center of hope and help for our communities. It's very easy to access either online or personally if you wanted to walk in. Education of our business leaders, get them engaged. So it's bringing our communities together, connecting our communities to our resources. And if we have that, we can solve every issue that we have out there, but without knowing who's there and who does what and validating them as well. There's a lot of sketchy things out there when it comes to rehab and that don't work. And so, all of these things will save kids, and families can have that comfort to speak.
You're great motivation, inspiration, I'll say. So how can you connect, what could you say to the mother or the father that's listening to this show? What can they do?
I think they can reach out to people like myself or Kit, connect with us now, join it, be the voice because there's safety in numbers, and talk about it. Ask for help, especially you dads, ask for help. You can't do it alone, and nobody, and that's the way all of history has been. People don't do it alone. It takes a lot of people to help a lot of people, so ask for the help and ask the experts.
Well, Kate, you've been great. We joked earlier, this relationship started with an email that you sent to me about 5 or 6 months ago, and you've been involved with the Crime and Safety Summits. You've been a part of the Smart Justice Advisory Committee, the council. Great advocate. I've learned a lot. Anything else you want to share with the listening audience about the good work that you're doing?
No, I'm excited to have this opportunity, and who would have thought I would say that, but I am, because I feel like we will make a difference. And I think that Georgia, and I'm going to plug a little, Governor Deal has an opportunity to leave a legacy, because Georgia needs help right now, and our families need help. So I say let's do it. Let's have that peace movement. Let's make Georgia be the example of leadership.
And actually, I agree with you. There's a lot of reform that's happening on the state level, and hopefully Fulton County can be a leader in terms of counties, in terms of addressing this issue.
I would love to see that. I'll be part of it.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
When we come back, we'll tell you how you can get involved in the conversation and how you can get in touch with the Chairman's Corner. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We want to know what you think about today's topic and what you'd like to hear about on other shows. Here's how you can reach us in the Chairman's Corner. We're just an email or phone call away. Be sure to connect with us online as well as Twitter and Facebook. That's all our time today. Thanks again for joining us on the Chairman's Corner.